guys, and welcome back to Planet 40k, the Necrons channel. Welcome back. Now, we've finally got the index released. That was yesterday, and today, in fact the last half an hour or so, we've actually had the points that have been released from the Warhammer community webpage. So we can now start doing full reviews with the points included. And yeah, we're going to get onto that today, and we're going to be doing the Canoptek Reanimator as our first unit review from the Necrons index. So guys, yeah, we're going to be doing virtually every single unit in this index, so make sure you are subscribed to not miss out on that. We're going to also be including tactical videos, as well as lots of synergy videos, and just fun videos in general. So yeah, make sure you are subscribed and hit that notification bell as well. Right, so what are we going to be doing with these new 10th edition reviews with videos? So first of all, we've got a little contents for you, if you like. You may have seen this on our Tyrannus channel because we did drop one video a few days ago before the points. So this is virtually the same thing but for Necrons. So we're going to be going through the datasheet that will include the points. We're going to be talking about some unit combinations, some index rules. We're going to be talking about enhancements if they do apply to the unit. Now in today's video they probably won't apply. We'll then talk about some stratagems that could relate to the unit, some tactics, how to score with the unit, and finally we're going to end on some pros and cons. Now in 9th edition what we were doing is we were doing a Planet 40k rating at the end of the video, which was a 5-star rating. And yeah, it's still too early for that, guys. We're not going to be doing that just yet. But if you want to put down your rating in the comments down below, by all means do that, and I will come back at a later date and I'll have a look at your comments and kind of give this a bit of a... I'll give it a rating, I'll come back to it, and maybe we'll even do a tier list video or something, or I'll just sort of upgrade the video and make a new one. But yeah, it's too early for that. I haven't actually obviously played any games in 10th edition, like most of you. 99% of you haven't actually played a game yet. So therefore, putting a rating just doesn't feel correct. So yeah, we're going to have to wait on that one. Right, so I've spoken plenty. That's the intro done. Let's get on with the datasheet. Right, so points cost, let's begin with that. This thing was 80 points in 9th edition. It's now 95, so it has gone up 15 points. Not a problem. 9th edition was a whole different edition. Now in 9th edition this thing actually stank as well, so I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I kind of half know the answer already, that this thing is going to be good. Right, so we're going to start on the flip side of the data card to begin. This is the easy side, so we're going to talk about the unit composition. It's one Canoptek Reanimator, of course, equipped with 2 atomizer beams and the reanimation claws. Cool. Keywords of note, it is now a vehicle, so it's not a monster anymore. It has also got the walker keyword, so that will interact with heroic intervention if you wish to do so. And yeah, pretty much everything else is, well, Canoptek and Reanimator. Standard, right? Flipping over to the front side, the most important side where there's always all the information, I guess. Let's start with the stats to begin. So, movement of 7 inches. It previously was 8, he's lost an inch, and every inch does count. Toughness 6, it used to be 5, so he's got a lot more tougher. Strength 4, no not strength, that is save, armor save of a 3+, because they've changed the order, haven't they? Armor save is a 3+, wound 6, leadership 7+, and the objective control is 3. So the save and the wounds is the same as it was. The leadership is of course new because they've changed the way the leadership works, and objective control is a brand new stat. He's going to count as 3 models when determining control of an objective. No, that's not really how you say it, is it? It just counts as 3 points. We'll do it that way, that's easier. Right, so I'm going to go into the abilities next because the weapons take a little bit more. There's a little bit more to talk about in terms of weapons, but let's get onto the abilities. Now, if you remember in 9th edition, this thing had that aura that wasn't an aura, that was an aura, and that unit had to stay within that aura, although it wasn't an aura, and it just stank, and then you had to spend 2 CP to change the beam into another place, and it was a +1 to the reanimation, wasn't it? Now it's all changed, it's all different, and it's way better. But we'll get onto that, I'm jumping the gun. Right, the core rules to begin. Feel no pain 4+. Brilliant. Feel no pain 4+. Every single wound, roll a 4+, and you just ignore it. Just like that. Just ignore it. Lovely. Faction ability, of course, is reanimation protocols. That's going to happen at the end of our command phase, and they've actually specified exactly when that happens, and I was right. I knew I was right. You don't need to go into that. It's after Battle Shock, and that's unfortunate for Necron players. But whatever, I think we've had a good index in general. But yeah, so reanimation protocols, it's got that. Now notice that there's no deadly demise here, it doesn't explode like it did in 9th edition. Cool, okay, whatever. That's probably good, in fact, because this thing used to be in our sort of area. So the explosions used to just explode on our own units, didn't it? So that's kind of good for us that it's gone. Now we get on to the main party piece of this model, which is the Nanoscarab Reanimation Beam Aura. So while a friendly Necron's unit is within 12 inches, not 6, 12 inches of this model, each time it uses, or each time that unit uses reanimation protocols, the unit reanimates an additional D3 wounds. Lovely, 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 lovely. So we're already getting D3 from the standard reanimation protocols, and that will either be new models or gaining wounds back for a model that's already been damaged. But now you're getting an additional D3 if your reanimator is within 12 inches, which is quite a large amount all the way around this thing. Yeah, that ability is good. And the thing is, and we're going to get onto this in a minute, so I'm not going to jump the gun this time, but there's so many ways in this index where you can trigger reanimation protocols. It's mad how many ways you can do it, and we're going to go through some of those in a moment. But yeah, that's all there is really from the abilities, but I'm more than happy with that. I'm not complaining one bit. Let's move on to the weapons. Now, this thing isn't really known for its damage output, but we'll go through them anyway. The Atomizer Beam, I think it had 2, didn't it? Yep, it had 2 of these. 12-inch range, 3 attacks per beam, so that's 6 of them. Hitting on a 4+, strength 6, -2 AP, 1 damage. I think it's as it was. I very rarely remember to shoot with this thing, and I've very rarely played with it anyway. But yeah, they are as they were, I believe. And the reanimation claws, which is the melee attacks, 4 attacks. Again, that's as it was. Weapon skill 4+, strength 5, no AP. It used to have -2 AP, so it's lost AP. Who cares, right? This thing isn't really kitted out for melee. And 1 damage. Really, we're not too bothered about the damage output. This thing, that's not what it's about, is it? It's not what this thing is there to do. This thing is there to reanimate stuff, and hopefully it will do with this new ability, so I'm really happy with that. Okay, so let's move on to the unit combos. I mean, where do we start with this? I've just put a picture of the actual 10th edition index picture because it literally relates to every unit we've got. Well, I suppose not, actually. There is one unit that I believe doesn't have reanimation protocols, which is the Transcendent Catan Shard. I haven't checked every single datasheet, so if there are any more, let me know down in the comments below. I think that is the only one that I've spotted so far. But pretty much everything else in the index is going to interact with the Canoptek Reanimator. That could be big units of Necron Warriors, it could be Destroyer units, it could be your Canoptek Wraiths, the Silent King. The Reanimator himself, in fact, is within its own 12-inch aura, so that will also interact with this ability. So that's really good. I mean, there's some secondary units that will also interact because of reanimation protocols, as well as just abilities in general. The Technomancer is the first one I want to speak about. So the ability it has, at the end of the movement phase, you can select one friendly Necron unit within 3, and that model regains D3 lost wounds. Now, that's not direct synergy with the Reanimator. I mean, I suppose it could be if you wanted to, but if you're using the Canoptek Reanimator's beam and then you're using the Technomancer to do that stuff, there's a lot of models coming back, a lot of D3 coming back in terms of wounds. I quite like that. There's also some synergy with the... I've just banged my elbow, funny bone. There's some synergy with the Overlord models and the Command Barges. Now, they're slightly different, in fact. I believe the Command Barge only interacts with infantry and mounted units. But for the image here, I've just put the one from the Overlord. So I don't want to confuse you because the Command Barge, I believe, is different. But the Resurrection Orb, while the bearer is leading a unit, the unit's reanimation protocols activates at the end of the opponent's command phase, in addition to the end of yours. So your reanimation protocols happening in your opponent's command phase as well as yours, and of course that's going to then trigger into the Canoptek Reanimator's ability, then the Nanoscarab Reanimation Beam, because you've triggered reanimation protocols. Every unit within 12 inches is going to get an extra D3. You can see where this is going already, can't you? There's the Ghost Arc as well, once per phase, just after an enemy unit has finished making its attacks. If there's any warriors within 3 inches of the Ghost Arc that has lost 1 or more wound because of those attacks, you can effectively trigger your reanimation protocols. Again, trigger reanimation protocols within 12 inches of the Reanimator, an extra D3. Nice. So warriors in particular, in fact, are going to do quite a lot because they can already get D6 back or D3 plus 3 back. And then if you've got the Ghost Dark triggering it again, and then you can get the D3 from the Reanimator. Then there's just so many ways of doing this, it's unreal. Even the Fortification that has had a massive points increase, I've not understood why yet, 'cause I've not actually dived into that actual datasheet. I've just seen the points of that and it was like, whoa, okay, 255 or something it was. But yeah, Reanimation nodes Aura. While a friendly Necrons unit is within 6 inches of this fortification, each time that unit's Reanimation protocols activates, you can re-roll the dice roll to determine how many wounds are reanimated. So that will of course apply to the Canoptek Reanimator's ability, because the unit reanimates an additional D3 wound. So it is still part of the reanimation protocols, it's just an additional D3 wounds. It's not a completely separate ability which wouldn't apply to it, because it does apply. So that's just another piece of synergy right there. There's probably lots more that I've not even pinpointed out in this video. I just wanted to get a few of them in for you, just so you can get your mind thinking really about how we're going to be doing this and how we're going to be using that Reanimator. But let's move on, because this video is probably going to be about 20 minutes or so, and that's what I'm hoping all the videos are going to be this long, because I want to put a lot of information into these. Next we've got the index rules. So we're going to go over the Reanimation Protocols rule, which is the army rule. Going over this at this stage of the video is probably quite silly because we've spoke quite a lot about it, but if you weren't aware what it is, I'm just going to put it here and I'll timestamp it at the bottom of the actual video. So yeah, in the end of our command phase, of course, we're going to get D3 lost wounds back, or models, either or, depending on what you need in that unit until you're at full strength, and that happens after battle shock. Now of course the Canoptek Reanimator itself also has reanimation protocol, so that model will also be using this. As for the Awakened Dynasty Detachment role, which is command protocols, now it doesn't apply naturally, because a Necron's character isn't going to be leading your Canoptek Reanimator. However, I have seen one of the enhancements that sort of got me thinking a little bit. Just trying to find it. It was called the Sovereign Coronal, which is an aura. So it's for a Necron's model only. While a friendly Necron's unit is within 6 inches of the bearer, that unit counts as being led by a Necron's character model. So if there was a Necron Overlord that was within 6 inches of your Canoptek Reanimator, for example, and it had this enhancement, then technically your Canoptek Reanimator would be counted as if it was being led by a Necron's character. Now that's going to enter... I've got hay fever again, I can't believe it. All day I've not done this, and then as soon as I start recording... Okay, I'm back. So yeah, going back to what we're talking about. If you're going back to the actual command protocols ability, while a Necron's character model is leading the unit, each time a model in the unit makes an attack, add 1 to the hits roll. So your Canoptek Reanimator, if that was being led by the, say, Overlord with that enhancement, it's a +1 to the hit roll. Not the biggest deal because the damage output isn't that great, but when you're talking about things such as the stratagems, it makes a bit of a difference. Because a lot of our stratagems will they'll give a certain buff. For example, Protocol of Hungry Void. Again, this isn't really going to apply too much to the Reanimator, but just as an example. Until the end of the phase, add 1 to the strength characteristics of the weapons in the unit. And in addition, if a Necron's character is leading the unit, with the enhancement they technically are, then you get an extra bit of AP on top. And quite a lot of our stratagems actually talk about if a character is leading the unit. So I'm thinking that that enhancement is going to play a big role in how we use these stratagems, and that +1 to the hit roll as well with some units. But for this video, I don't think we need to go too deep into that because the damage output isn't going to be that crazy. So we're going to in fact skip over the enhancements as well because we're not characters. Let's get into the stratagems now in fact. So there's only one stratagem that will directly relate to the Canoptek Reanimator, which is the Protocol of Undying voice crack. The Protocol of Undying Legions. I might just leave that in as well. Right, so when do you use it in your opponent's shooting phase or fight phase, just after an enemy unit has resolved their attacks, it's going to be 1 command point, and you're doing it on one of your Necron units that's had 1 or more models destroyed as a result of the attacking unit's attacks. Okay, so it's not actually direct. It's not actually direct synergy because it could be a unit that you're trying to buff. Again, it could be Necron Warriors perhaps. So the unit activates its reanimation protocols and reanimates D3 wounds. And when doing so, if a Necron's character is leading the unit, you get D3 +1. Again, if a Necron's character is leading the unit, la 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 la. So, This stratagem literally will trigger reanimation protocols again just after your opponent is shot or fought. Which, again, if they're within 12 inches of the reanimator, guess what? It's an additional D3. So it'll be D3 as the standard one, D3 for the reanimator. Now I saw on Facebook earlier, in fact, somebody was sort of arguing the point that it says, where does it say this? It says your unit activates its reanimation protocols and reanimates D3 wounds. And they were trying to separate that sentence as if to say, you get D3 for the reanimation protocols and you reanimate D3, as if you're getting 2 D3 from the stratagem. I don't read it that way, and I don't think most of us would read it that way. But I found it quite funny, and I thought I'd share that with you. Right, so yeah, we spoke stratagems. Next, we're moving into the tactics. Right, tactics-wise, this one's pretty clear, to be honest with you. It's pretty much buffing any unit that's within 12 inches that has reanimation protocols, which is virtually everything except for the Transcendent Catan Shard. I mean, there's countless ways of triggering reanimation protocols, and if your reanimator's there, it's just simply D3 more, isn't it? I mean, even the worst case scenario for your reanimation protocols, you roll a 1 for your standard reanimation roll, and then you roll a 1 for the reanimator roll. That's still 2 wounds back, and that could, that's worst case. So that could in fact get you 2 warriors back or a Lich Guard model back. But best case scenario is you roll 2 3s on the D3. And that could be 2 completely separate models of Scorpion Destroyers coming back in that single turn, which I think is pretty good. And of course it gets even more crazier, as mentioned earlier, with the Necron Warriors, because yeah, D6 or D3 plus 3, and then the Resurrection Orb on top of that. It's just mad how many ways we've got to trigger in this thing. Now what I would be doing tactically is I would be hiding this thing behind a terrain feature, behind some sort of obscuring terrain, so you don't have line of sight of enemy units, especially a gunline unit. Gunline faction, Tau for example. You don't want them to be targeting your reanimator, because in this edition they definitely will be. In the 9th edition, at the start of the edition at the very least, people thought that the reanimator was the thing to target, and they very quickly realised actually it's just garbage, let the player have it because it doesn't do anything. This time round it's going to be different. So I would hide it. Remember, it's only a 12-inch aura. It doesn't need line of sight to the units within the aura. And even if it isn't in that terrain feature or behind an obscuring terrain feature, it's still got the 4+ Feel No Pain save as well, which is absolutely crazy. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with the fact that it's got the Feel No Pain save and that large aura. But yeah, I wouldn't be doing much else with it other than just tagging along with as many units as possible without it actually being able to be targeted. So for scoring, now I've not actually looked at every single one of the secondary objectives. I don't know if they've actually been released or not. I've seen a few of them here and there on different videos and different snippets on the actual Warhammer community page. So I've not seen all of them. So if I've missed anything, just let me know down in the comments below. This is our first review of the channel of 10th edition, so I'm going to miss some things here and there. But to be frank, the Canoptek Reanimator isn't there for scoring points. It's just buffing any unit that's trying to score points, whether it's primaries, whether it's secondaries. It's trying to buff that unit rather than actually score for itself. I mean, maybe if you've got assassination, you're buffing the death marks to keep them alive so that you're continuing on with your sniper rifles. Maybe you're keeping up the warriors in the centre of the battlefield for area denial. Or maybe it's a Silent King. Maybe you're just buffing the Silent King D3 plus D3 just to keep the Minears up and running perhaps. There's lots of combinations with this thing, but in terms of scoring, it all depends on what your other units are doing and obviously what secondaries you've got. But there's nothing exactly kitted out for the Reanimator. That's not its game. It's not its game. Right, so to conclude the video, we're going to get into the pros and cons for the Canoptek Reanimator at the start of 10th edition. Right, so the pros, got that 12-inch aura that works on pretty much anything. Again, not the Transcendent Catan Shard, as I've only recently realised. Might have to try and change the image. If I haven't, let me know. The ability also works on itself, so it's automatically getting a D3 times 2 in terms of reanimation protocols. Pretty cool. It's got that 4+ Feel No Pain save, which I think is just a lovely bonus to have. I didn't expect that at all. I mean, I knew the Reanimator would be good this edition, but having the 4+ Feel No Pain just naturally, that's really good. That's really good. I mean, there's countless ways to trigger reanimation protocols in general. We've just gone through a couple of them in this video. There's plenty more. And bear in mind, this is just the launch dynasty as well. Once we actually get a codex at the, when is it, the end of the year? there's going to be more dynasties, and there's going to be lots more interaction with triggering reanimation protocols as well. So this is just the start, guys. What we got next, this might actually be in fact the first auto include that I've come across in this index. There's going to be some others, but for me this is an auto include. Now I'm going to start talking slightly negatively here, because our actual reanimation protocol's ability, our army rule, can be quite easily nullified if your opponent just focus fires on a unit. If they just focus fire on a unit so that we're not actually able to take advantage of reanimation protocols, because either the unit has not been touched or they're completely wiped out. Now there's good points and bad points to that in itself. You've just got to kind of work out why it's good. I'll probably do a separate video on this, because there is a lot of good in that. There's a lot of good in knowing that your opponent has that information. But bringing this back to the Canoptek Reanimator purely on that ability alone, reanimation protocols, it is very good, and it's also a very good deterrent. In fact, if you've got 20 Necron warriors, or even 40, 2 squads of them, and a reanimator in the centre of them behind an obscuring terrain feature, and your opponent just doesn't have enough to, say, take out one of the units, are they going to bother using any of their attacks on that warrior unit, knowing that they're just going to all come back? They're just going to all come back regardless, because you've got the stratagem, maybe you've got a resurrection orb, you've got the reanimator. The fact that they know that means they're not going to go for it. They're just going to leave them there, and you're going to be scoring points from it. So they're going to have to go to something else. So yeah, I'm going to get onto that more in a different video, I think. And the final pro is the fact that it's a walker. This isn't a massive thing, it's just another tiny little cherry on top. The fact that it's a walker, you can use the heroic intervention stratagem. If you wanted to do that just to tie up a unit, it might be a shooter unit that can't fire into engagement range, and it may be a way of just nullifying some shooting attacks. The likelihood is you're never going to use it, but I just wanted to add that in there because it's got the walker keyword. Now, as for some cons, it's lost a bit of movement since 9th edition. It's only a 7-inch movement now. It's alright, not too bad. Offensively, it doesn't have much output in terms of damage. Again, it's not his game, is it? So I don't really care too much about that, but we still got to put it as a con. And finally, it's got low toughness for a vehicle. Now, bear in mind, this is a vehicle walker, not a monster. And it's only toughness 6, so it's a very light vehicle. Even standard infantry with, standard weapons can take this out if they really tried. And yeah, Field Pain 4 Plus does assist that, but it can be targeted by all types of weaponry, whether it's in melee and at range as well, and it can go down if caught out. So you've got to kind of be a little bit careful where you position this thing, especially against certain factions. Again, if you're going up against a ranged faction, you get it hidden behind obscuring terrain. If you're going up against a melee faction, you screen it off. And if they've got loads of flying units, you make sure you screen them off close to your model, but not too close to the point where they can pile in, just far enough so that they can't just hop over onto your reanimator. So guys, I think that is the review all done for today. Again, I've not played a game yet, so I can't be giving you too much more than that really. Once I start playing these games, I can sort of maybe do an advanced tactics review or an advanced tactics video of the reanimator on its own. Maybe do something on the actual table back there. But for now, pre-launch of 10th edition, this is what I got for you. So yeah, guys, if I've missed anything, let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear it. And also remember to be subscribed on your exits and liking the video as well, of course. That does help. But yeah, thank you all for watching, guys. See you in the next one.